Hey guys, currently reporting from San Vicente Bungalows, or St. Vincent Bungalows. Not really sure what this place is, but I got invited. Apparently it's like some private club in the LA area where celebrities come and hang out, so I'm feeling kind of out of place. Not really my scene, but they have really good lunch. That aside, I went to a private game last night in the Calabasas area. I don't want to say exactly whose it was or where it was because I'm not sure that I'm allowed to, but I did play some interesting hands of 25-25 no limit, so that's what we're going to go over today. Before we do though, I want to let you all know that officially my band's music has released. We're on Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, everything. So if you guys want to check it out, we have a single out now. It's called Looking Back. Make sure to give it a listen. Let me know what you think. And also this Friday, we're releasing our first EP, which is going to be 6 new songs. So follow us on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, and let me know what y'all think. Anyway, that's enough shameless plugging. Let's get into the poker.
All right, guys, here we are playing 25-25. The 50 was often on, so quite the big game for a home game here in Calabasas. In this first interesting hand, I've got Jack Deuce offsuit. We're already off to a questionable start, but the reason I'm even in this pot to begin with is the host of the game opens up the action to 125 and he begs me to defend my big blind. So when the host asks you for a favor, you have to comply, at least favors like these. So we go off to a flop which comes down ace queen 10 all clubs. So we flop a gutter and technically speaking a straight flush draw. I check it over to him and he checks it back. Turn card is the jack of spades, so we turn a pair, but still not looking too good on this kind of board. I check again and this time he bets $100. We've got the jack of clubs and of course a pair, so I can't go anywhere just yet. Could sometimes check raise as a bluff, but this time I just call and we see another jack on the river. Weird run out here where we flop the world and then end up making these kind of weird trips that probably aren't good since we're losing to any king on, of course, a flush now. So I check it again and this time he bets $300. Now at this point I think it's okay if you call, but it just seems a bit lazy to me. Most likely he's value betting top pair, a small flush, or of course the obvious straight since any king now makes a straight. And I think our hand is a pretty cool candidate to check raise with. We have removal to strong flushes, of course, and full houses as well with my 3 of a kind. So I decided to turn this jack deuce into a bluff. We'd want to use a big sizing here since we're representing a boat. So I make it $2,000 to go. After a bit of thought, my opponent jams all in. So that's bad news. Turns out he's got pocket queens, which he's kind enough to show me after the hand. Unfortunate we ran into it there, but right off the bat, we start off giving some money to this nice gentleman who brought me all the way out here to give him $2,500 or whatever I lost in that hand. Moving on to the next one. There's an open to $75. I make it $300 from the small blind with ace 10 offsuit. Should mostly just fold this hand and occasionally re-raise. I think those are the only options. Don't really want to call out of position here. But then the big blind, player on my direct left, he makes it 1100. Now this is Dylan Flashner. You guys might be familiar with him from Hustler Casino Live. He's in this game, he makes it 1100. And let me be the first to say, ace 10 offsuit facing this action out of position is just the easiest fold in the world. But Mr. Flashner is a good buddy of mine, and he's someone I like to give action to when I get the chance. So that's what I do here. I toss in the call for 1100, and we flop an ace. It's ace 6 deuce, 2 diamonds and a heart out there. So this is kind of the problem of playing weaker aces, is when you flop top pair, are you really that happy about it? Well, we're about to find out, because after I check it to Dylan, he jams all in immediately for, I think it was like 2,000 effective. Well, I didn't call pre-flop, just a full top pair, so I make the call, ready to accept my fate, but he says he has pocket queens, which, unless he's slow rolling us, which is certainly a possibility in this game, since everyone's pretty friendly and trolling is more than allowed, it's encouraged. Unless he's slow rolling us, we've got the best hand and we're in great shape, and it turns out that is the case. He is not lying about his pocket queens, and we hold on this run out, so we end up winning this pot. Undeservingly so, you might add, but we win it regardless. Next, similar developments unfold as there's a race to 75, a call on the button, and I look down at a real hand, this time pocket jacks in the small blind. Must have been exactly 1 round after the ace 10 offsuit hand. Anyway, of course I'm going to raise it up. I make it 350 to go, maybe 375. Initial raiser calls, but the button folds. So we go heads up out of position to a flop of 10, 8, deuce, 2 diamonds out there. Pretty good board for jacks anytime you flop the overpair. Sure, we're going to be in trouble against sets or two pair, but can't be afraid of monsters under the bet, so I'm going to keep betting for value. I put in a bet of $475. I think checking here and betting are both fine, but I do definitely want to bet a bigger size the times that I do put chips in there. So $475 it is. My opponent makes some sort of remark about my C bet being too big, which I think is funny, but then he makes the call off to a turn which pairs the bottom card. Can't ask for a cleaner card than that. I keep betting $1,200 this time, and once again my opponent makes the call, going to a river which is an offsuit 9. Could make a case for checking here and allowing him to bluff, but considering that I would have many bluffs myself and he's probably not going to bluff too often given this action so far, I decide to just jam it in there myself for value, balance out the times that I'm full of it, and of course target maximum value from whatever non-believing pair he might have. We don't get snap called, which is always good news, but he also doesn't snap fold, so it looks like the dream situation. After a while, though, he shows that he has King Jack offsuit. That's right, he was just coming along for the ride. I don't know if his plan was to bluff or hero call in the end, but he does not fold it. In fact, he thinks about it for a minute or two, saying he might beat some random bluffs, but in the end, he does eventually let it go. And I show him he made the right decision. Pocket Jacks was good, and we almost got maximum value somehow from King High. In the next one, we are once again battling against this same opponent. He's playing a bunch of hands, and everyone else is pretty snug, so I guess that's how it's going to go tonight. He opens it up to some amount, I think it was like 100. I look down at ace queen offsuit in the small blind. I make it 500 to go. He makes the call and we go heads up to a flop of King 6 rainbow. I bet small, just like I would with all my hands in this situation. Paired board, 2 high cards, pretty standard so far. Bet 300, he makes the call and we see a 9 on the turn. This time I check it since I think our hand performs quite well as a check call here. Could also check a king once in a while or even a hand like aces. My opponent does not check it back though. He thinks for a bit and bets 800. Already a slightly uncomfortable spot with ace high, but I think the normal play is to just come along and call. We're still beating bluffs, and I think he could have a plethora of those. However, in the moment, I just caught this vibe that he was probably betting like a pocket pair or a 9 or a 7 for value. He could also have a king, of course. And I don't know, it just didn't feel like he was bluffing this time, so I make a slightly unorthodox fold here, which I don't think is best long term, but in this case, I thought it was. It turns out it's not, as my opponent quickly shows me a bluff. He's got queen 7 of diamonds for a total bluff. Nice play, sir. This one goes to you, but the night is young. In this next one, there's a few limps before I make it $250 with ace 3 suited. The button calls, and then the small blind makes it $1,000. Now, this is Emil Hirsch, who also plays at Hustler Casino Live once in a while, more known for his acting roles in quite a few different movies that I'm not about to list, but needless to say, the man knows how to get down in the poker streets. I've seen him bluff quite a bit, so I think he could be full of it here. In addition, we're also playing 7 deuce, which I hope I don't have to explain. Probably everyone watching this video knows what the 7 deuce game is. All those reasons, I think, make my hand a nice re-raise candidate. We've got a suited ace. We're never going to be in terrible shape even against big pairs. And of course, getting folds from potential bluffs like ace 10 or whatever would be a huge win. So I decide to go for it here. Not something you want to do every time, but this time I do jam all in for his remaining like 4,000 or something. The button gets out of the way, but then Emil does not fold. Big surprise, right? He makes the call and it turns out he's got ace king, so we're in pretty bad shape here. We're gonna run it twice, and it turns out we get very lucky on the first board as we hit a 3. The rest of the cards are all low and irrelevant, so we suck out versus ace king. Then on the second board, we hit an ace, but of course that's no help as he's got a much better kicker. However, the turn pairs the 7, and then the river is another 7, which means we both have 7s full of aces on the bottom board. That means we're going to take down 3/4 of this pot, which is, of course, very unfair since I got it in as a huge underdog. But Lord knows I've been on the other side of this one quite a few times, so I'll happily take it. Sorry about that, Emil. In the next one, yours truly looks down at 7 deuce. It is time for me to win a pot. If everyone folds and I'm able to show down with this one, we win $100 from each player and $200 from the last player to fold. So quite a bit of money up for grabs if we're able to pull this one off. But it seems it's going to be a little bit tough because after I re-raise someone to $300, we get 2 calls. That's right, the small blind and the initial raiser make the call. So 3 of us go into a flop, which comes down 10, 9, 7 with 2 clubs. This is where the hand gets a bit strange. Small blind checks, and the initial raiser, who is actually Emil, leads out now into the pre-flop raiser, which is me. He bets $500. Well, I don't think this is going to be the strongest hand, right? If you call preflop and then lead into the aggressor, oftentimes it seems to me that players don't do this with super strong hands. So I'm going to float along and hope the small blind gets out of the way. Plans are, of course, to win this pot later on or improve to like trips or four of a kind if somehow we get there, but I'm not expecting that. I make the call. Unfortunately, the small blind calls as well, so that's not good. But then we see an interesting turn. It's the jack of clubs, bringing in a flush and of course a straight, so a pretty nasty card. Small blind checks, and now Emil checks. I guess this is as good a chance as I'll get during this hand. Just gonna hope that no one has a flush or a straight and bet myself. So I put in 600 bucks. Small blind makes the call. Emil does not love it, but he makes the call as well. So off to a river, which is the queen of hearts. Shouldn't really change anything. I guess ace king is now the nuts, but I don't know how often I would have that hand, I guess. Anyways, small blind checks. Emil checks. Back to me now on this river, and I guess we can just give up and check back or go for it. You guys can probably guess what I'm gonna do. I'm going for it. I put in $2,000. I'm happy to see the small blind folds pretty quickly, but then Emil thinks for quite a while, announcing that he has pocket tens. Right, so he flopped top set, let out into me, and unfortunately got the worst run out ever. Seems displeased, grabs his chips like he's gonna call. That's a bit terrifying, but then he picks up his cards again and throws them into the muck, and we get to show down 7 deuce, the bluff, winning the pot, and of course collecting the bounty from everyone. Pretty sweet moment here. Not gonna make any friends with these kinds of plays, but hey, it's just a game, right guys? So I'm running pretty hot in this game now. Definitely want to give some action. I think this is the right approach when you're in private games. Can't just win every single pot forever. Or I guess you can, but it's not really my style. So there's an under the gun open to 125. Button calls, and I'm going to get frisky with 9-6 suited from the small blind. Not recommended, but I hope you guys understand this is situational, if you will. So I make it $800. Early position calls, button calls as well, so 3 ways to a flop, which comes down pretty damn sweet for 9-6 of spades. It's ace 10-5 with 2 spades, so we've got a flush draw, and that's about as good as you can hope for with my hand. However, I think I would often check an ace or some stronger hands against 2 players out of position here, so I decided to do that with my flush draw. Betting, of course, more than reasonable, but I think checking is also okay. Everyone else checks as well, so we get a free turn card, which is a 6. It's a 6 of diamonds, we turn a pair, and I think at this point it's okay to start bluffing. Could also be betting an ace or any other value hand I might have at this point that checked on the flop. So I put in 2/3 the size of the pot, 1600. First player folds, but unfortunately the button does not. He comes along for the ride, and we see the innocuous deuce of diamonds on the river. Shouldn't really change anything, and now it's a question of do we want to continue bluffing or try to take this showdown value? Well, there are plenty of draws that might have called on the turn and now miss on this river, so despite not having a ton of showdown value, I think it's enough that we can try to just see if we win this pot with a pair of 6s. For that reason, I decided to check it. I also don't love bluffing with spades since we want my opponent to have spades, but that's a little bit too nerdy. So anyway, I check my pair of 6s, hoping that somehow it's good, and he gives up on the river, but he does not give up. He puts in $2,000. Now, of course, the question is he bluffing with a missed draw, or is he now going for value? And I don't really know. I feel like an ace likely would have bet on the flop. There are so many draws available. I feel like he probably would put some money in there for protection once it gets to him on the flop. So the fact that he gave a free card on the flop makes me feel like he likely doesn't have a super strong hand. I guess he could have turned a hand like ace 6 or pocket 6s, but we have removal to both of those hands. And the river doesn't really change anything, so what exactly is going on? I guess you could have like ace deuce suited, for example, but I don't know, there's just not that many value hands and plenty of bluffs. We're getting a decent price. At the same time, people don't bluff rivers super often, especially in recreational games like these. So I think it's a close spot. You guys are probably guessing already that I'm leaning towards a call, and that's exactly what happens here. So I tossed in the money. Show me a good hand, sir. If you've got it, you've got it. Sure enough, he does. Pocket 10s. That is a set on the flop. Nice check back from him. He ends up getting close to maximum, if not the maximum amount of value out of me, and we lose this one, unfortunately, with big lick. In the next one, I open up the button to 100 with ace 5 of diamonds, get called by both the small and big blinds, and we go 3 ways to a flop of queen jack 6 with 1 diamond. Action checks from the small blind to the big blind, as it does, but he now leads out for $300, a pot-sized bet. Pretty weird, I think. Probably not a strong hand, similar to the earlier pot I played. So with a diamond out there and 1 overcard, I decide to make the call, not really expecting to somehow improve to the winning hand too often, but mostly planning on stealing this one down the line one way or another. I toss in the 300, small blind gets out of the way, and we make a 5 on the turn at least, but not really expecting that to be good. However, my opponent checks it over to me, and like I said, I think it's a good idea to start bluffing in these kinds of spots. Not going to get super nerdy with it, but pretty much my thought process is opponent no have good hand, so I make bet. I toss in $800 and my opponent makes the call. I think he could easily be playing a jack this way, maybe even top pair on the flop, although that would be a really weird lead. But anyway, I am definitely planning on blasting a plethora of rivers as a bluff. Of course, turns out it's not going to be a bluff though, because embarrassingly enough, I get there. It's another 5. So we make super disguised 3 of a kind, and of course all straight draws missed. This is what you call a dream spot for sure. My opponent checks, and now it's just a question of how much value do we want to try to get. Well, I'm representing a bluff or something pretty strong. That's usually an indication that a large bet size is in order. This time is no exception. I throw in $2,400. We don't get snap called, we don't get a snap fold, things are looking good, and sure enough, after about a minute, my opponent's curiosity gets the best of him. He flicks in a call. That's good news for me. I turn over trip 5s, and he seems pretty impressed that somehow we got there in the end, as he shows, I think it was a queen. So yeah, quite the fortunate run out. Questionable whether or not the bluff would have worked. It looked like obviously not, since we ended up getting called. Perhaps it was a bad idea to float the flop and try to bluff later on, but don't need to think about that because we get there. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we arrive at the last hand of the night. In this one, there's a few limps before the big blind makes it 225. I'm in the straddle on his direct left. I look down at 6-4 suited and decide to get frisky with this one and isolate the big blind. I feel like he could be raising with not a super strong hand. Now, of course, I do think he's gonna have a powerful hand since he's raising a bunch of limpers, but I feel like he likes his hand, but maybe doesn't love it. So I'm gonna try to punish that. I make it 700 to go. Only he makes the call, so we go heads up to a flop of Jack-Jack 8 with 2 hearts. Absolutely nothing going on for me, of course, but I did re-raise pre-flop, so I could have some stuff. He checks and I bet $800 once again. My opponent comes along, and I think at this point we're probably not in great shape. Turn card is the 5 of diamonds. He checks, and this time I decide to just wave the white flag and check it back. Although maybe white flag is a bit misspoken, because I would often check back some overpairs here, perhaps afraid of a jack or a flopped full house, something like that. So I think pot controlling with some stronger hands is okay. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm done with this one just yet, but I check it back and we see a brick on the river. My opponent now leads out for $1,500, and I feel like he could easily be stabbing with a weak pair or a missed draw of some sort. But if he does have one of those weaker holdings like a flush draw or whatever, I think we can get away with a cheap bluff here. It's not going to take much to fold out the hands that I'm trying to fold out, so I make it $4,000, a little over a min raise, and he folds pretty much right away. So that is a big win. Taking this one down with my garbage cards feels pretty good. Luckily didn't run into a monster there, and yeah, we get the job done. That was the last fun hand of the night. As always, I hope you all enjoyed the hands.
Right, so as you guys saw, that was quite the action game for 25-25. A lot of swings, but in the end we came out on top. I won like $5,000 and change, which is more than welcome considering the stakes of the game. Could have been a lot worse. There was a few hands that almost ended in disaster, but luckily we got there. And yeah, it was a nice break from the usual stream poker. So I hope you guys enjoyed the hands. Reminder that my band's music is out now everywhere, so please check it out. We worked really hard on it and I'm quite proud of it. Many more songs to come as well, so if you guys are fans, we'll probably be playing shows in the LA area, which of course I'll let you guys know if that happens and you can come watch us perform live. But until then, good luck at your local tables. This week I'm back on Hustler Casino Live. Next month I'm going to Vegas. A lot of fun stuff coming up. So as always, thank you guys for being a part of the journey. I'll talk to you all soon. Until then, peace. I'm gonna go eat some lunch at this fancy club. Wish me luck. See ya.